following is a presentation of the Liberty Flames Sports Network from Van Wagner. Welcome to the Liberty Flames Clubhouse Report from Van Wagner on the Liberty Flames Sports Network. The Flames Clubhouse Report is brought to you by Fakes Jewelers. Since 1930, trusted for generations. Stay tuned for the latest views on Liberty Flames baseball, a look around the ASUN Conference, and we'll catch up with Flames head coach Scott Jackson. Now, here's the voice of Flames baseball, Nick Pierce.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Liberty Flames Clubhouse Report. Nick Pierce with you this week. Thanks so much for stopping by to talk a little Flames baseball here with us. As Liberty prepares to continue a 4-game homestand this weekend, the Flames will welcome in their old rivals, the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, to Worthington Field at Liberty Baseball Stadium. 3-game series Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And this will be the first time these two ball clubs have met in 5 years. Hard to believe. Coastal departed the Big South Conference after the 2016 season and moved on to the Sun Belt. Liberty left the Big South after the 2018 season, moved on to the ASUN. These two teams have not crossed paths ever since, and it should be a lot of fun this weekend. So the Flames come in 25-9 now on the season. Liberty coming off a midweek loss to Duke. A little bit shell-shocked, to be quite honest, after that one. Liberty losing a home game for the first time in more than a calendar year. In fact, you've got to go all the way back to March 6th, 2020, a loss to Kent State at home. That was the last time the Flames dropped one in Lynchburg. So 16-game home win streak goes by the boards, but Flames will attempt to start a new one coming up here this weekend. Liberty still in pretty good spot after sweeping its ASUN series on the road last week against North Alabama. The Flames just dominated the Lions. It will not be that easy this weekend. The Chanticleers are 18-13 on the season. They're coming off back-to-back wins and beat North Carolina on the road Tuesday night 6-3 in Chapel Hill. And that is a common opponent these two clubs have. The Flames also have a couple of wins over the Tar Heels from earlier this season. So it should really be a good matchup here between these two clubs. And one that I know that fans are really excited about because, like I said, these two clubs were rivals for so many years. If you go back 2005, 2006 through about 2016, for about the better part of 10 years, the Big South Championship almost always went through Liberty and Coastal Carolina. Now, Coastal won its share of those. The Chanticleers won 16 conference tournament titles, 18 regular season championships as well. The Flames did dethrone the Chanticleers back in 2013 when the conference tournament was in Lynchburg and Liberty made that big run to win 5 games in 4 days and go to a regional for the first time in more than a decade. That was an exciting day in Lynchburg. I remember that very well. It was the Big South semifinals. The number 1 seed Coastal Carolina needed 1 win to move on to the conference championship game. Flames had to beat the Chanticleers twice, and then they did so. Just a really exciting day. Also can remember a game in 2015 when the Flames went down to Conway. It was a Friday night game, and Garrett Lyons was on the mound for Liberty. He wound up throwing somewhere close to 140 pitches that night, but wound up staying in there long enough to help Liberty get the win over the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers that night. So lots of history between these two ball clubs, none of which will be really relevant to anyone on either team at this point. I mean, we're talking 5 years since the last time these two teams met, back in the 2016 Conference Championship game when Coastal beat Liberty 1-0 en route to a College World Series championship. And hard to believe that's already been 5 years ago, but certainly it will be exciting for the fan bases as these two teams measure up. A look at what's new with Liberty since the last time we chatted. The Flames catcher Gray Betts still on a hot streak, 20-game hitting streak now, and he is closing in on the known record of Curran Radall. That's a 32-game hitting streak. Still a little ways to go, but boy, Betts just doesn't seem to be showing any sign of slowing down. Will Wagner also took home ASUN Player of the Week honors this week. He had .476 last week with a couple of home runs, drove in 11 runs in 4 ball games as the Flames went on to win 8 straight before having that win streak snapped by Duke on Tuesday night. That game against Duke on Tuesday was just a real rarity for anything we've seen from this team this year. I mean, the Flames bullpen came in walking guys. The offense really couldn't get anything going. It was the first time Liberty had been shut out all season long. Just one of those, it's going to happen. You play 50 games, and, there's going to be one night that's, I guess, a clunker, if you will. And the Flames just really couldn't get it going. And Duke played pretty well, and that was just kind of the end of that. But certainly not anything that Scott Jackson or anyone's worried about long term. I think the veteran ball club down there, they're going to be able to turn the page pretty quickly. A lot of veterans in that clubhouse that can turn their sights to the task at hand here this weekend. And this is a big series because, quite honestly, the Flames took a little bit of a hit in the RPI. They're certainly not out of it by any stretch yet. I think if it all ended today, the Flames would firmly be on the board as far as one of the teams that's being discussed and probably even in the NCAA tournament right now, based on where they are, about 40, 41, 42, somewhere in that range coming into the weekend. But certainly a series win would go a long ways, or even a sweep. Those are hard to come by, but if you can win at least 2 this weekend, you have to feel pretty good about where you are heading into the final month of the season. And Coastal, certainly a club capable of doing it. I mean, we just talked about it. They beat North Carolina on Tuesday night. They've had their ups and downs this year, though. The Chanticleers 18-13. They have had to deal with their share of injuries. They're missing their Friday night starter, Reese Maniscalco. Just found out that he's going to be out for the remainder of the season. So they're going to have to turn to a reliever to start the first game of this series. Alaska Abney will get the ball for his first career start on Friday night. Not sure how long they'll be able to keep him around in the ball game. The batting order has been flipped around at times this year by Gary Gilmore, just trying to find something that is consistent with who he has available to play. They had to deal with a COVID-19 shutdown that cost them 5 ball games at the beginning of the month. They've had players deal with COVID. They've had them deal with contact tracing, and then just the other nicks and bruises and injuries that come along with a 50-plus game season. So it's not been an easy year for Gary Gilmore and his team, but they are treading water, and they are certainly a threat coming in here to this weekend. We'll talk more about that with the head coach of the Flames, Scott Jackson, a little bit later on. We'll get his thoughts on the series coming up this week. Also, had a chance to visit with Flames designated hitter Garrett Wilkinson, who's made the most of his opportunities when called upon. We'll chat with the San Antonio native here in just a little bit. You're locked into this week's edition of the Liberty Flames Clubhouse Report, presented by Fink's Jewelers from Van Wagner on the Liberty Flames Sports Network.
Back-to-back Cure Bowl champions.
Blow! The Flames have won!
Ranked 17th in the nation. Wins over Virginia Tech and Syracuse.
The Flames wrap up the Hokies.
Flames Nation, we're just getting started. Be at Williams Stadium this fall for Liberty Flames football. Head coach Hugh Freeze and the Flames are looking to win their 3rd straight bowl game. Season tickets start at just $70, a savings of 51% from single game prices. Get yours now at lufootball.com. Now, back to the Liberty Flames Clubhouse Report, presented by Fink's Jewelers.
Welcome back to this week's show. Nick Pierce with you as we visit now with Flames designated hitter Garrett Wilkinson joining us here as Liberty gets ready for the 3-game series against Coastal Carolina this weekend. Garrett, appreciate the time. How are you?
Good. I'm doing good, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Big series coming up this weekend at home as you guys try to get back on the winning track. And not that you've gotten too far off of it, but boy, it had to feel weird on Tuesday night after a home game, and there's no fight song playing, there's no handshaking. It's first home loss of the year. How odd was that?
It was definitely odd. We had made it a pretty long time without having a loss, so definitely different going back into that locker room afterwards. We hadn't had that with this team so far, but it's good to get it out of the way. Now we can move on and hopefully start another streak.
Yeah, 14-0 at home and before Tuesday, and then had won your last 16. But like you said, streaks are broken. Time to start a new one. You get a chance coming up here this weekend against a pretty good Coastal Carolina team that looks like they're starting to find themselves a little bit. Got a win over North Carolina earlier this week. How pumped are you for the weekend series?
It's going to be exciting. Definitely going to be a good atmosphere. Glad to have them come to our house. So it's going to be a good weekend. I'm excited for it.
Flames DH Garrett Wilkinson with us. And boy, you have really taken advantage of your opportunities. I mean, you look at 9 starts this year. When you get the start, your batting average is .375. I don't know how much you pay attention to those types of things, but I'll just fill you in. A couple of doubles, 8 RBIs, and you've scored 5 runs. I mean, that's not easy to do when you don't know day to day necessarily when you show up at the ballpark if you're going to be in the lineup or not. How do you prepare each game knowing you could be in the lineup or you could be coming off the bench?
Yeah, I just like to treat it every day like I am playing. And then if I'm not in the lineup, I'm going to be ready for my opportunity, whether it's a lefty coming in or just whatever needs to happen. I mean, I'm going to be ready. There's nothing really I can do about it. Just be ready when your number's called and just take advantage of the opportunities that you get.
You mentioned it right there, too. I mean, it seems like you've been kind of settling in those starts against lefties. Do you kind of have an idea when you get to the ballpark? Is it getting to that point in the season where guys are kind of settling into roles and, hey, we're facing a lefty today, I'm probably going to be in the lineup?
Yeah, that's pretty much been what it's been like. So if there's a lefty starting, I'll usually know before the game happens. So you don't know, but you have an idea.
What do you do in the dugout between at-bats or even when you don't start a ball game? I mean, how do you stay loose? I mean, some guys like to go out there and play the field, just stay engaged and not have to sit around and think about the next at-bat. What's it like for you in the dugout, Garrett?
It's definitely my first time having this role of just sitting on the bench and then just having my number called and having to be ready. The first couple games were probably a little bit iffy. Just if I wasn't in the game, like getting my number called late in the game, 8th inning, 9th inning to hit. And I'm like, oh man, I got to hit. So now throughout the season, I've gotten to a point where I can stay locked in pretty much the whole time. And then I can see if there's a lefty warming up in the bullpen or how the game's going, that I might get an opportunity so I can get stretched out and just be ready for it.
Flames DH Garrett Wilkinson with us here on the Clubhouse Report this week. And, I think the best way I've heard it described as far as pinch hitting, or I guess even in your case, DHing as well, but especially pinch hitting, is you look for the first good fastball you see. What's your mentality when you go up there to the plate?
Yeah, definitely just to still be aggressive. If I get my pitch, just take advantage of it. Get in there. If I get a first pitch fastball, put it somewhere, put a good swing on it. Just have a quality AB, try to swing at strikes and not try to do too much.
Let's go back here for a bit because you grew up in San Antonio. You went to Midland Junior College before coming to Liberty. What was your recruiting process like coming out of high school? And then we'll talk a little bit about making the transition to LU.
Coming out of high school, I had some exposure, but it was mainly to the Division I schools around my area. It was nothing to where I had an idea. I was like, I want to go Division I because most high schoolers do. And it just came down to it where me and my family talked about it, and junior college just seemed like the best route. Midland especially, it was just a great opportunity. And so I'm glad that I took advantage of it for sure. Every junior college player you talk to will probably tell you that they are very happy they went to junior college.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of guys that turn out to be Division I players after going that route. And for you, was it just a chance to kind of get yourself exposed more on a national level than if you had maybe gone Division I there close to home?
Yes, definitely. I wouldn't have had the exposure without going to junior college. I mean, I was able to go to the junior college all-star games, and that was the most scouts I had ever seen. The whole fans were just scouts. That's actually where Liberty saw me. But it was just definitely the right idea, right decision for me. So I'm glad I did it.
Flames designated hitter Garrett Wilkinson with us on the Clubhouse Report. What was that like? You said you went to the junior college all-star game, a lot of scouts, a lot of Division I coaches around there, and also some really good players as well. What was that whole experience like for you? When did that happen?
So that was right before the season started. It was me and another player from my junior college. And it was a great experience to get out there. It was kind of a muggy day. We got to take in and out, and the way that the game was set up, I was supposed to play the second 7 innings and someone else was playing the first 7 innings. And about the 3rd or 4th inning, we got rained out. So I didn't even get my opportunity. It was Coach Gaines at the time that was there. He got to see me take in and out. So you got to see me as a catcher throwing around and moving around. And then we got rained out. Most of the scouts left. There's probably about 30 scouts left, and we decided to move everything indoors. And we got to take 12 swings in front of 30 coaches behind the net, and then catch bullpens for the pitchers that were left. So I thankfully I did a good thing, and Coach Gaines gave me a call afterwards. And so eventually Coach Cannon had to come down and watch a couple games at Midland, but it was a good deal.
Yeah, and that had to be a little bit unique as well, talking to the pitching coach who came to recruit you. But what was the first inclination that you got as far as Liberty and that this was going to be a good fit for you?
It was probably when I got on the phone, and probably one of the first times they called me, actually, because it was funny. I was debating committing to a different school, and I talked to my mom. And this was a little bit after the All-Star game. And she was saying, honey, just pray about it. Just pray about it. And so I prayed about it, gave it about a week, and I woke up to a text from Liberty. And I was like, wow. And I remember watching them play earlier this season before. I watched them play against Virginia at home. And I was like, man, this school looks insane. Like everything looks so big league about the film, everything. I was like, wow. And I hadn't heard too much about Liberty in Texas. And so once I got that call and that text message and I started to see all the facilities, I came on a visit and I fell in love. I committed probably about a week or two after I got back home from my visit. And so that's how it went.
Flames DH Garrett Wilkinson with us. Last couple of things here. You mentioned you prayed about it. How important is your faith for you?
Very important. It's definitely played a big role in getting me to where I am today, and definitely just going to let God lead the path from here on. And so very excited. So.
And also, what about growing up in San Antonio and playing baseball there? Because I see that you played football and basketball in high school as well. Multi-sport athlete. It seems like we got a lot of those on the ball club, which I think is a great thing. But what was it about baseball that stood out for you above the others?
At a young age, I was very into it. I was in Little League. I remember something about that Little League, that 12-year-old age when you're in the Little League All-Stars, man, that's when baseball's the most fun. You play every day, you practice every day, and you get food after the practices and games. And so that was definitely the most fun growing up playing baseball right then. When I was in high school, what really made me make the decision was just self-awareness. And I knew I wasn't going to be a basketball player. And football, I was a linebacker. I was going head-to-head with one of my best friends who's a linebacker at UT now, University of Texas. And after my sophomore year, I was tired of banging heads with him. And I decided to make the switch to go all baseball then. So.
Growing up in Texas, Rangers fan or Astros fan? Because you're kind of right between there, aren't you?
Yes, I'm an Astros fan over the Rangers.
Do you get to go to games very much?
I haven't been to too many games. It's kind of out of the way from San Antonio, but I've been to a game at both stadiums, and that's about it.
Good stuff. Hey, Garrett, we appreciate the time. Before we let you get going, just thoughts on Coastal Carolina this weekend. And, the Chanticleer is coming to town. That's a team that's won a College World Series within the last 5 years. Hosting a team like this, non-conference play, I mean, how important is this series?
Very important. We definitely need to come out and be ready. Put our foot on the gas at the start. Hopefully we can jump out to a lead and just keep them down and just continue that streak throughout the weekend. So it'll be exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Appreciate the time, Garrett. Good luck coming up this weekend.
Thanks, Nate.
That's Liberty Flames DH and catcher Garrett Wilkinson joining us. Stick around. We've got more of the Flames Clubhouse Report coming up in a moment.
This broadcast of Liberty Flames Athletics is brought to you in part by Beacon Credit Union. Beacon Credit Union is a full-service financial institution offering a wide range of products and services. Having served Lynchburg and the surrounding area for over 75 years, our vision is to be the premier provider of quality financial services, a leader in our community, and the most progressive financial institution in our field. More information on Beacon Credit Union and all your banking needs is available online at mybcu.org. Equal housing lender, member NCUA.
back to the Liberty Flames Clubhouse Report, presented by Fink's Jewelers. This week's show continues with the thoughts of Liberty head baseball coach Scott Jackson, presented by Beacon Credit Union.
Clubhouse Report continues this week as we visit here with the head coach and get ready for a 3-game series coming up with Coastal Carolina here this weekend. And, coming off the Duke ball game here last couple of days, what's the work been like here with the guys as they get ready for the weekend?
Yeah, we rested Wednesday and, just, kind of optional stuff with the baseball part of it in the weight room. So, those guys are getting down to crunch time now with schoolwork and certainly their bodies in late in the year. So managing, taking care and resting versus, getting in here and kind of trying to do too much is probably the biggest thing that I want to try to gauge at this point with our players. Thursday will be a great practice for us, a team-type practice as we get going and, really give ourselves a chance to kind of, get on the field as a team. You just don't have many of those days, as you get into these, these weeks that we click off. I mean, you really only have, 2 practice days. One of them is generally going to be pretty light because you're probably coming off a weekend series or getting ready to play again. In our instance, it was getting off the road on Sunday night at 3 a.m. and then, not really doing too much on Monday because you want to stay rested for the game Tuesday. So, we're trying to balance that as best we can, trust our players, talk to those older guys that can kind of have a really good sense of their bodies and how they feel and listen to their bodies, from experience. So that's kind of been our approach this week. I'm looking forward to Coastal this weekend. It should be a great series.
Coming down the home stretch here, all those things you just mentioned as a head coach, you're worried about that stuff. And then you're also paying attention to the external things, right? The things you can't control, postseason positioning, RPI, all those things. Certainly the fans are paying a lot of attention to that stuff. How do you put that stuff in perspective and make sure your team is just focused on going out there and doing what it can control? Yeah,
that's exactly what I talk about is, just the next game. There's just not much margin for error as a mid-major when you're starting to talk about, the postseason. So if that's a fact, and it is, let's just win the next game. Let's just win the next pitch. Let's just do the things that we know we can do. I also talk a lot about just enjoying being together. That's one thing that I think you can get so caught up in is looking down the road or looking ahead to the next series or the next game. And, you just don't enjoy the moments and you don't enjoy where God's put you in this season of your life with teammates and coaches and players. And, so just it's such a wonderful group of kids to be around. If you talk about enjoying each day, especially now that the weather's starting to warm up and just being on the practice field, there's just those moments that we're not going to get back together. And let's just enjoy them and try to make the most of them. Laugh a little bit, laugh at yourself at times when things aren't going well. And just, let's do this thing together the way that we should, that God calls us to do, because he's all put us here for a reason. And we're going to enjoy it together.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, especially looking at the way things turned out last year and then just even having a season this year. A lot to be thankful for as we visit with the head coach of the Flames, Scott Jackson, here on the podcast. And, looking ahead to this weekend, Coastal Carolina, that's a ball club that won a World Series 5 years ago. Gary Gilmore, the head coach, still a cancer survivor, just a great man as well as a great baseball coach. I mean, how excited are you to get to play these guys this weekend?
I'm excited to see Gilly and just give him a hug. And, the same with Kevin and Drew and Chad Oxendine's their operations guy. I mean, I worked with Chad on the same coaching staff at UNCW. I've watched Kevin Schnall. He's about my age, so we kind of came into this thing together. He was a great player and came in as a great, young coach. And now, he's just as much responsible as anybody for the success of that program. I mean, Gilly, everybody wants to talk about that national championship with Coastal and with Gilly, and rightly so. But I think Gilly might tell you some of the best teams that he ever had at Coastal were the ones that didn't win that 2016 national championship. So I say that to point out that this program has been just unbelievably successful, probably a model, if you will, for a lot of the mid-majors on this side of the country, and one that I just have a tremendous amount of respect for. I can remember getting to UNC Wilmington as as a young pitching coach in 2003 and 2004, and those were my first taste of a good local rivalry with them. You know, we would do a home and home each year, and we always had great games, and certainly just admire everything that Gilly's done with that program, from the success to the facility to just the longevity that he's had there, and had a vision for that program. I mean, I can remember when, their offices were in, double wide trailers there at Coastal, and now you pull up there and they've got, a Taj Mahal and a hitting facility there. So it's just impressive. I mean, anytime you sit back and look at it, there's just no other word to say, but it's impressive.
It really is. And you make a great point. I mean, I remember back when you were here the first time, 2008, and some of those ball clubs they had, David Sapelt, Tommy LaStella. I mean, they've turned out a ton of big leaguers there as well, and that's I think that's the model. But everyone wants to get there. I think this program certainly wants to get to that point. It's easier said than done, though.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, talking about it and then doing it and having it transpire for you. First of all, you've got to get good players, so that goes back to recruiting. And Gilly's always been involved with the recruiting, and so is Kevin. And so when you look at that model and you look at that footprint, I mean that's impressive, like we said. But it's also like you talk about. I mean, you got to be able to do it and back it up and continue to be good. I mean, I remember when they broke through to the postseason a couple times, and then it was like, hey, can we get to a super? And then they got to a couple supers there. Had some tough luck against Carolina, North Carolina, and South Carolina, trying to break through, and they finally did. And sure enough, I think the expectations of that program is what vaulted them to give them that opportunity to win a national championship.
Head coach of the Flames, Scott Jackson, with us, and also I remember back we talked about this. The very first night game at the old Worthington Stadium. Yeah. You were here on the staff at that ball game, had over 3,000 people in the game. I mean, what an unbelievable atmosphere. Just, some of those ball games, I mean, a lot of good memories here, as this used to be a rivalry here between the Flames and Chanticleer. It hasn't played in 5 years now. It'll be fun to kind of see if we can rekindle some of that. No,
it'll be fun to have just a good non-conference, probably as good of a non-conference opponent as we've had in here on a weekend for a 3-game set since I've been here, for the last 4+ years. So I think that's great for our fans, and something that I'm very thankful that they're willing to come up here. So we'll return this trip in 2024, and I'm just thankful from a COVID standpoint we were able to get this kind of quality opponent for our fans to be able to enjoy a weekend of good baseball.
Well, last few things here. Let's talk about your team a little bit as we look into the weekend. Gray Betts now a 20-game hitting streak. That's his. Probably the longest since Curran Riddall, I think, in 2009. He went on a 32-game hitting streak. The way he's hitting it right now, I think he may be able to match that. Who knows?
Yeah, that's impressive. I don't know that I've been a part of one of those. I've had some really good, hitters that I've been fortunate to share the same dugout with. Ackley, Seager, those guys. It's just really hard to do. The same thing with Will. I know he had like a reach-based streak going. Mm-hmm. I don't like to talk about streaks because I feel like I jinx them, but you got to step back and kind of look at what you're seeing here. And Gray Betts is just he's a unique player. He's unique from just I think the intellect he brings. I think he's unique from the style of play. I think he's unique from the catching position. I think he just you put all that in a pot and stir it up. You've got a heck of a baseball player, and I'm glad he's wearing a Liberty uniform.
And then Aaron Anderson as well. He's leading the club in hitting, and I mean a guy that coming out of Division II. How do you evaluate guys like that, and how can you tell that they're going to have success at the Division I level and be able to translate it?
Yeah, an old scout friend of mine told me one time, and it's always stuck with me, hitters are going to hit. And when you look back at his numbers at Flagler, and then you look back at his numbers in the Northwoods League, hitters hit. And he can hit, and he brings a lot of a toughness and a grinder type mentality to it. It's a very passionate at bat, which is what I really like about him. Everything's really important to him. His swings in the cage, his swings in BP, he just takes so much pride in what he does. And you sit there and you just watch him on a daily basis, and you get such an appreciation for it. So I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but I mean, just from the history of what he brought to the table. that was kind of what we felt like we were going to lean on. I have to give credit where credit is due. We've got a former player down there in Jacksonville, and Dan Hodges, and Dan just reached out. He knew Aaron, said, "Hey, Coach, this kid's going to graduate from Flagler. He's going to be in the transfer portal." So I have to give him the credit for giving us the heads up. I know there was a lot of teams in our league that were recruiting him as well, and for Dan to be able to kind of, those alumni that like to help you recruit, this one's one of those that he gets all the credit for. So thanks, Dan, if you're listening.
Good stuff. Well, Coach, appreciate the time. Looking forward here to the weekend, and should be a great series with the Chanticleers.
Thanks, Nick. See you soon.
As always, the thoughts of Flames head baseball coach Scott Jackson are presented by Beacon Credit Union. What a great story that was with how the Flames picked up Aaron Anderson out of the transfer portal, and Dan Hodges with the assist there, the former Flames pitcher. Hodges had some good years with the Flames and still doing his part to help out his alma mater. Well, Anderson and the rest of the Flames will have their work cut out for them this weekend. Looking at the Chanticleers, offensively, they don't look like a group that misses fastballs very much. I saw some of that game against North Carolina the other night. Parker Chavers down there in the 3-hole ripped a fastball over the wall for a long home run. B.T. Ryapel, their catcher, also homered in that game. Zach Beach, their first baseman, hit a home run. They've got 42 dingers on the season, and not all of them are coming in that home ballpark down there in Myrtle Beach that's so hitter-friendly either. So you're going to need to be able to locate pitches. You can't just run it by these guys, and I think that's where a guy like a Trevor DeLate actually matches up pretty well against Coastal. DeLate doesn't rely on velocity to beat guys. He works both sides of the plate. That changeup will be in play. That could be a really nice pitch for him here on Friday night. I think Friday night advantage Flames with DeLate getting the ball, just the way he's been able to set the tempo early on in the series. And then with Coastal Carolina and their uncertainties with their pitching situation on Friday night, we mentioned that Alaska Abney's going to get the ball to start the game. He actually pitched an inning on Tuesday against Carolina out of the bullpen. He's made 15 relief outings. His longest outing of the season is 3 innings. So it could be a situation where it's similar to Tuesday. Coastal has to use a lot of pitchers to get through the ball game on Friday night. If the Flames can come out of there with a win, then you certainly like your chances to take the series. It's not a done deal, but then obviously you just have to get one of the next two. Could be dancing around some showers on Saturday as well as we look to the weather, but hopefully we'll be able to get all 3 games in 3 days coming up here over the weekend. A look at the starting pitchers. Abney on Friday, 1-0 with a 3.16 ERA. Again, the right-hander making his first start. Side armor on the mound. That'll be a little bit of a unique look for the Flames' right-handed hitters. Could see Scott Jackson decide to stack the lefties in the lineup against him. Trevor DeLate, again, he goes for the Flames, 5-1 with a 2.72 ERA for the lefty. Couple of right-handers on Saturday. Nick Parker for Coastal Carolina, 2-3 with a 4.22. Nick Willard for Liberty, 2-0 with a 1.08. And after the Battle of the Knicks on Sunday, Jacob Maton, 2-3 with a 5.67 ERA. Trey Gibson for Liberty, 6-3 with a 3.20. We'll have all 3 games on the radio for you this weekend. Also, all 3 games are on ESPN+. Radio coverage will be on 90.9 FM in Lynchburg, also streaming online at libertyflames.com. Pre-game show coverage on Friday starts at 5:32. First pitch at 6 o'clock from Van Wagner on the Liberty Flames Sports Network. That'll wrap up our show here this week. Once again, we thank our guests, Flames DH and catcher Garrett Wilkinson, also to the head coach Scott Jackson. Out of time on this week's show. Hope you'll join us next time for more of the Liberty Flames Clubhouse Report presented by Fink's Jewelers from Van Wagner on the Liberty Flames Sports Network. Till next time, my name's Nick Pierce saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to the Liberty Flames Clubhouse Report presented by Fink's Jewelers. For more on Flames baseball, check out libertyflames.com. You can also follow the team on Twitter and Instagram at Liberty Baseball and on Facebook at Liberty Flames Baseball. The Flames Clubhouse Report is an exclusive presentation from Van Wagner on the Liberty Flames Sports Network.